The $10 trillion exposure, how finance sits on the soil. Start with a balance sheet, not a field. The number that underwrites rural America isn't yield, it's land value. Banks lend against it. Insurers price risk from it. Pensions and IITs treat it like a bond that grows corn. Now put a finger on the real collateral, the top 8 inches. Strip the biology and structure from that layer, and the number on the appraisal quietly loosens like a fence post after spring floods. Here's where the exposure hides. US farmland is valued in the trillions. Every mortgage, every equipment loan pinned to that ground assumes a certain future capacity to produce cash flow, rents, crop sales, tax assessments. But future capacity isn't a line of best fit. It's the ability of soil to hold water, cycle nutrients, and resist loss. When organic matter slips and infiltration slows, cash flow stability erodes before anyone updates a spreadsheet. A streak of bad weather years looks like volatility. Underneath, it's degraded resilience. Stakes, think of a county bank with a portfolio of operating lines secured by acres appraised at peak values. A 3-year run of drought and flood exposes a pattern: higher input bills to chase the same yields, rising insurance claims, then a couple of farms that restructure. The bank tightens terms. A dealer sees fewer new tractors on order. Land rents soften. Appraisers shuffle comparables that are already stale because the soil isn't what it was when the last sale closed. That slide doesn't hit a headline, it lands in a kitchen at tax time. Action on Wall Street looks cleaner but carries the same dirt. Asset managers bundle farmland into funds marketed as inflation hedges. The pitch is simple: people eat in recessions, but the NOI they project assumes stable operating costs and weather risk contained by insurance. Insurance, though, pays after loss. It doesn't rebuild granular structure. It can't restore an aquifer's pressure or stitch a fungal web. If claim patterns trend up because soils hold less, premiums follow. As coverage costs climb, cap rates shrink. The safe asset becomes a question: safe for whom and for how long? Meanwhile, something else is happening in bond markets. Municipalities issue debt for drainage, roads, and water treatment. When fields shed soil and nutrients, creeks silt, culverts clog, nitrates rise, and plants spend more to meet standards. Those costs ride on local taxes. A town that once budgeted for snowplows now quietly budgets for dredging and filters. If the farm base weakens, so does the tax base. Ratings agencies watch trends, not anecdotes, and trend lines follow water. What nobody priced fully is correlation risk. Degraded soil amplifies weather into a systemic event. A heat dome over a region with shallow roots forces simultaneous irrigation draws, spiking energy demand and water stress, shrinking margins across dozens of counties at once. A stalled front dumps inches over bare tilled ground, carving gullies from Nebraska to Missouri, silting rivers, slowing barge traffic, nudging commodity basis wider. That ripple touches traders, insurers, lenders, and city budgets. It's not climate alone, it's how land is prepared to meet it. Get this: mortgage math depends on appraisals that assume comp productivity, but comps don't measure living function, they measure last year's optimism. The day fields blow, a neighbor's auction sets a new floor. A family with a 60% loan-to-value ratio becomes 75 overnight without missing a payment. Covenants tighten. A renewal conversation shifts from interest rate to collateral. One more bad year, and a farm that never missed a note becomes special assets, managed by a department that doesn't know the North 40's wet spot, only the spreadsheet's red cells. Microstory: a retired teacher's pension fund owns a slice of a farmland REIT. Her statement shows steady dividends. 2 dry summers later, operating partners renegotiate rents, citing wells that lost pressure and fields that crusted after a storm. The dividend trims a hair. She shrugs. Then a municipality in the same region raises water rates and issues new debt for upgrades. Property taxes creep. Quietly, her cost of living meets the farmland's hidden losses. So what's the number? You won't see a consensus that pins an exact figure to soil degradation's financial drag. But the exposure spans asset classes: farmland valuations, equipment finance, crop insurance reserves, municipal bonds, energy demand for pumping, downstream navigation costs, health costs from water contamination. Stack them, and you're staring at a levered bet on topsoil function. The label on the fund says real assets. The fine print says if the ground holds. There's a way to de-risk without shrinking acres. lenders can discount rates for verified soil health improvements, cover crop acres, reduce tillage, measured infiltration, because those borrowers default less when weather swings. Insurers can cut premiums where practices reduce claims. Appraisers can add a soil function line item and stop pretending two fields with different organic matter are equal. Municipalities can co-fund upstream covers rather than buy bigger filters. Grain buyers can offer contracts that pay for stability, not just volume. Here's the quiet truth: finance doesn't need to save the planet. It just has to stop mispricing the ground. When dollars reward living function, practices shift fast. The risk is real, the exposure wide, and the fix boring. Keep armor on the soil, keep roots in year-round, disturb less, rebuild the sponge. That's not a slogan, it's collateral management. The metrics that lied: bushels masking collapse. On paper, the numbers looked great. County yield averages crept higher, 5-year trend lines pointed up, and the local elevator added another bin. Those metrics told a smooth story: more bushels, more efficiency, more security. But bushels are a rearview mirror. They don't measure whether the soil can take one more shock without cracking. They don't show the cost of holding the line. Here's what the spreadsheet missed. Yield is a snapshot, resilience is a film. You can post a record harvest while the rooting depth shrinks, the infiltration rate halves, and the organic matter slips 1/10 of a point every season. The field still performs until a weather punch lands, and then you learn what the metric didn't say. It's like bragging about miles per hour while the fuel gauge quietly heads for E. Stakes got personal in boardrooms and kitchens. Bankers judged farms by average yield and operating margin. Crop insurance set guarantees off past bushels. Land appraisers pulled comps from recent sales that reflected grain checks, not water holding capacity. Farmers chasing a higher APH planted earlier, sprayed sooner, ran bigger iron, because the metric rewarded speed. Meanwhile, the living structure that turns rain into yield eroded grain by grain, uncounted. Action looked like progress. Precision ag sharpened placement, seed tech stacked traits, equipment cut overlap to inches, yet the baseline crept: more nitrogen to hit the same number, more fungicide to cover stressed canopies, more herbicide to beat resistance that thrived in short rotations. Costs rose invisibly beneath the yield curve, like debt under a soaring stock. If the weather cooperated, margins survived. If it blinked, they didn't. Impact showed up only when the system hiccuped. A 2-inch rain on fall-tilled slopes carved rills the map didn't track. A mild drought forced 3 extra irrigation cycles in June that no metric captured as soil loss. A harvest windstorm toppled corn in counties that had removed shelter belts years ago to speed planting. Each incident got coded as weather. The pattern, fragility, never made the report. Get this: bushels can rise while water quality falls. Streams turned brown after storms. Nitrates climbed downstream. Municipal plants spent more to meet standards. Those costs sit off farm, off ledger. When a town raises rates, the farmer sees a utility bill, not the missing sponge that used to catch April rain. The metric that mattered to him, yield, said nothing about the bill he helped create. Meanwhile, something else was hiding in the averages. High performers masked the slide. Bottom fields, thin knobs, compacted headlands, sandy slices, underperformed and got subsidized by the flats. The county average ticked up because the best acres got better with tech. The worst acres got worse with disturbance. Aggregated, it looked fine. Disaggregated, it was a slow leak. What nobody priced in was time lag. Soil responds like a trust fund. You can overspend for years and still look solvent. Then a dry August exposes shallow roots. A pounding May exposes weak aggregates. The collapse feels sudden. It took a decade. The metric was honest about short-term output and silent about long-term capacity. Micro story: a co-op agronomist runs infiltration tests for a field day. 2 rings, same soil type. 1 minute on a no-till, cover crop strip, water sinks, stopwatch clicks. On the tilled check, the water stands, glistens, then crusts. Farmers murmur, nod, snap photos. Harvest comes. The tilled strip beats the cover by 3 bushels. The crowd remembers the number, not the stopwatch. Next spring's storm remembers the stopwatch. The fix isn't to ditch metrics. It's to measure what matters when weather turns. Infiltration rates alongside yield. Soil organic matter trends next to APH. Evapotranspiration savings from residue and cover. Rooting depth indicators the banker can recognize. If the guarantee accounts for living function, the race stops rewarding practices that burn it. Here's the quiet pivot. The minute dollars attached to resilience metrics, behavior shifts. Insurers shave premiums for verified cover crop acres. Lenders trim rates for reduced tillage and documented water savings. Grain buyers add a steady supply bonus for farms that ride heat domes without claims. Those are still bushels, but now they're bushels backed by a sponge. Until that happens, the black wind will keep grading our math with a blunt pencil. Dust Bowl 2 echoes with a modern twist. Call it a rhyme, not a repeat. In the 1930s, the plow ripped prairie sod, drought arrived, and the wind found its opening. Black blizzards carried soil to the Atlantic. Recovery came when shelter belts rose and grass returned. Today, the sky still goes dark in places, but the storm looks different. It's not one decade-long disaster, it's a series of sharp hits amplified by how we farm. Start with the fields, then deep tillage, summer fallow, bare ground across whole counties. Now fewer shelter belts, wider equipment, longer bare windows because speed pays, then wheat on marginal land. Now corn and soy pushed west with irrigation and short rotations that keep roots shallow and residues thin. The trigger, drought, hasn't changed. The amplifiers have. In the 30s, the wind found exposed soil. Today, it finds exposed soil plus compacted layers, plus heat-stressed canopies, plus drained wetlands that once slowed water and trapped silt. Modern dust event doesn't always start with a drought year. It can start with a good year followed by an impulsive fall tillage window, a mild winter with little snow cover, and a dry, gusty March. County roads film over with soil like someone sifted cocoa across the map. The farmer who watched his top-inch drift last spring wasn't unlucky. He was standing in a system that prefers bare ground for efficiency. GPS swathes don't curve around trees. Trees went. Here's where the twist gets personal. Chemicals masked the need for rotation, and irrigation masked the need for sponge. That bought decades. It also hid the slow leak. In the Dust Bowl, failure was obvious. Fields blew, crops died, families left. Now failure slips in sideways, more passes to hold the same yield, more pumping to keep the same canopy, more flash floods where a 1-inch rain once soaked. You can hit a record harvest in September and lose a millimeter of topsoil in May. The ledger balances until it doesn't. Meanwhile, something else is happening on the edges. Towns downwind clean filters after spring winds. Creeks run brown after every thunderstorm, not just the big one. Road ditches fill with silt that used to be someone's fertility. Those losses don't carry a crop insurance code. They carry invoices to county budgets and quiet health warnings when nitrates spike. The modern Dust Bowl isn't a single region on a 193's map. It's a patchwork of hotspots that light up when weather and practice align. What nobody wants to say out loud is that we removed many of the fixes the 1930s taught. Shelter belts, ripped because a 40-foot boom hates trees. Contour strips, smoothed for speed. Perennial covers along waterways, narrowed to gain a few acres of rows. Those weren't foolish decisions. They were rational under a scoreboard that valued acres planted and hours saved. The wind doesn't care about the scoreboard. Get this, there are counterexamples hiding in plain sight. A county that kept shelter belts finds snow stacked higher all winter, moisture banked into spring, and fewer brownouts when March winds rise. A farm that runs cover crops and no-till watches a dust storm roll over the road and not lift from between its rows. That's not ideology, it's physics. Aggregates resist shearing. Residue slows wind at the surface. Roots knit the top inch so it doesn't fly. But there was one problem. Our modern twist adds heat. In the 1930s, drought plus wind stripped fields. Now heat domes push soil temperatures past the comfort zone of microbes that build structure. Bare ground hits 120 degrees. Biology idles. The next rain can't glue crumbs back together because the workforce is stunned. That's why timing matters. Keep living roots in shoulder seasons, keep armor on during heat, reduce disturbance when microbes are active. It's not a vibe, it's a schedule. Micro story, 3 days earlier, a farmer in eastern Colorado rolled down his lane at dawn. He stopped where an old hedgerow still stood, a ragged, half-mile line of trees his grandfather planted after government men came with shovels in 1935. Snow had lingered there into April. On the leeward side, Wheat tillers were thicker, soil darker. He knows those trees cost him seconds on every pass. He also knows his neighbor's field across the section blew last March, and his didn't. This was the moment everything changed in a Nebraska county after a spring cyclone. Plowed ground scoured, fields under rye covers scuffed but held. The local paper ran 2 photos side by side. At the co-op meeting, no one argued climate or politics. They argued time. Could they seed covers and still plant on time? Could they leave a few windbreaks and still run 60-foot bars? The answer wasn't easy. It was possible. In the aftermath, some made a small pivot, strip, till instead of full-till rye ahead of soybeans, narrow prairie strips across prevailing winds, a few hedgerows spared. Not perfect. Better, Dust Bowl 2 won't be a sepia photograph. It'll be a balance sheet bleeding slowly, a creek that never runs clear after storms, a pivot that runs more hours for the same grain. Or if we keep the fixes that work, it'll be a shrug when the wind rises because the ground stays put. When it rains, it pours, floods, tiles, and nutrient loss. The storm didn't look special on radar, just a bright band crawling east. By midnight, 3 inches fell on fields that had been bare since fall tillage. By dawn, water ran like sheets of glass. It didn't soak. It slid, gathering soil as it went, turning ditches into chocolate rivers. Downstream, a creek swelled fast, brown and foaming, carrying this year's fertility away before the crop ever saw it. Stakes were immediate. A family counted on that field to cash flow the new planter. Now the top quarter-inch, where the biology lives, was in a culvert. The co-op truck would still bring fertilizer, but it would arrive as a replacement, not an investment. The county would scrape silt off a low-water bridge. The town would treat water for sediment and nitrates. None of those bills say storm tax, but that's what they are. Here's where tiles enter the story. Across the Midwest, farmers laid perforated pipes under fields to do one job: get water off fast enough to plant on time and keep roots out of drowning conditions. Tiles work. They lower the water table, dry topsoil, and widen planting windows. But the speed that saves a spring also launches nutrients downstream. Dissolved nitrates, invisible in the clear water leaving a tile outlet, move straight into creeks. Phosphorus rides with eroded particles when surface runoff hits. When those loads meet warm river water, algae blooms. Far away, in a different state, a dead zone grows each summer where a river meets the sea. Action at the edge of a field looks like this. A tile outlet gushes clear water after a storm. The farmer nods, he can run the planter tomorrow. That same hour, a stream gauge spikes. A reservoir manager opens a gate. A water plant blends sources to dilute nitrate. Parents get a note, infants shouldn't drink tap water until levels drop. The farmer didn't intend any of this, he needed a dry seedbed. The system was built to solve for days, not for months. Meanwhile, something else was happening beneath those tiles. When soils lose organic matter and structure, the pore network simplifies, less sponge, more pipes. Rain either stands and runs off or drops straight to tile. Both roots skip the slow filters, roots, microbes, aggregates. The result is a paradox: fields that either flood too fast or drain too fast, with very little held in place. The hour after a storm becomes everything. The day after matters less. Get this, there are ways to keep tiles and lose less. Cover crops sip late-season nitrates before frost, then release them back when they decompose. Deeper roots open channels that slow water, spreading it across more pore space. Bioreactors, simple woodchip trenches at tile outlets, feed microbes that turn nitrate into harmless nitrogen gas. Saturated buffers use vegetation to pull nutrients as tile water spreads into a strip before rejoining a ditch. None of these erase the need to plant on time. They cushion the rush. Micro-story from Ohio: 3 miles of tile under 600 acres, corn after corn, spring is wet. The farmer plants between showers, June brings a gully washer, tile runs strong. 2 weeks later the county emails nitrate alerts. The farmer calls his agronomist. They seed rye on half the acres after harvest. Next spring the rye fields green up early, drink the soil solution, and the tile runs slower with lower nitrate tests. The corn yields 2 bushels less. The water tests change a lot more than the yields. But there was one problem: phosphorus doesn't dissolve as readily, it often leaves attached to particles. That means surface runoff and erosion still drive losses. Bare soil slakes and breaks, sending tiny bits toward the nearest low spot. That's where structure matters. Aggregates resist breakup. Residue slows water at the surface, letting it enter rather than sprint. Strippy till leaves a band for warm soil and an interrow of armor. It's not pretty in a calendar photo. It's effective in a downpour. What nobody ties together at the co-op counter is how floodplains and field edges connect costs. A mile of buffer along a creek can capture sediment that would have filled a brown lake twice. A wetland restored in a field corner turns a nuisance into a sump that holds a flash rain, meters it out, and drops sediment before it leaves. Towns pay for dredging and filtration. Counties pay for gravel to refill washed-out roads. Farms pay for replacement fertility. The cheapest fix sits where water starts, not where it ends. Impact shows up months later. The same fields that flushed nutrients in spring bake in July because the sponge is thin. Tiles that kept roots from drowning now drain every shower too quickly, forcing pivots to run. Diesel covers for capacity the soil once provided free. If you've lost a point of organic matter, you've lost the water equal to a modest summer storm. Multiply that by a county, and you're pumping a river out of the ground to replace what ran away. The shift is boring and proven. Keep living roots through winter. Leave residue. Reduce disturbance so aggregates survive the first hard rain. Install bioreactors and saturated buffers where tiles exit. Seed prairie strips on contours to slow sheet flow. Put a few trees back where the wind and water run. None of this is theory. It's what farmers funded by programs focused on sustainability test, measure, and refine with real-world constraints. In the aftermath of that ordinary storm, the farmer walked his headlands. He could see where the water started running, not where it ended. He circled 2 outlets in his notebook: bioreactor, buffer. He penciled rye ahead of beans. He called the neighbor who'd done it for 5 years and asked about timing. The rain will come again. The choice is whether it takes the field with it. The hidden subsidy web, paying for the problem we created. Follow the money and you'll find the ruts. The checks that keep farms alive also keep fields bare at the wrong times. None of this was designed to fail. It was designed to stabilize. But stabilization tied to volume and speed ends up subsidizing the very practices that make land brittle. Start with crop insurance. It's the backbone. Premiums are discounted because taxpayers cover a chunk. Guarantees are pegged to average yields, so higher yields mean higher guarantees. That's logical protection for farmers in a risky trade. It also tilts decisions. Planting earlier, even into tacky soil, keeps APH strong. Spraying pre-emerge on schedule guards the yield curve. Tilling in fall guarantees a dry, warm seedbed in April. Each move preserves the metric that secures the loan. The public pays part of the premium, then pays again when claims rise after weather slams a fragile field. Then come commodity programs, the floor prices and payments that smooth out ugly markets. They keep lights on. They also reward acres and output on a handful of crops. Wheat, corn, soy win shelf space. Diverse rotations don't. A farmer doing small grains with a clover under seed or grazing covers may lower risk on the land, but not on paper. The safety net is woven around bushels, not the sponge that produces them. Meanwhile, conservation programs exist and they help. Producers apply for cost share to seed covers, fence for rotational grazing, plant buffers. The line is long, funding is finite. Even when approved, the payments arrive as projects, not as a new rule set for risk.